Sorry, no motorized vehicles allowed, the guard sneered, blocking the disabled veteran's wheelchair. Nobody spoke up. Nobody helped. But when 12 Medal of Honor recipients arrived in formation, the entire mall went silent. What brought America's highest decorated heroes here? And why did they all salute that same wheelchair-bound veteran? The fluorescent lights of Pine Valley Mall cast harsh shadows across my father's face as he sat in his motorized wheelchair, staring up at the security guard who blocked our path. "Sir, I'm a veteran," Dad said quietly, his voice carrying the same patience he'd shown through 3 tours in Afghanistan. "This is a medical device, not a vehicle. I'm Michael Roberts, and watching my father, Master Sergeant James Roberts, U.S. Army Rangers, Ret. Being treated like this made my blood boil. But he'd raised me to handle conflict with dignity, just as he had during his 20 years of service." The security guard, his nameplate read P. Davidson, smirked down at us. He couldn't have been more than 25, his uniform crisp and spotless, clearly enjoying his small measure of authority. "Rules are rules," Davidson said, tapping his clipboard. "Mall policy states no motorized vehicles inside the building. Security concerns, you understand." Around us, Saturday shoppers slowed to watch the scene unfold. Some shook their heads in disapproval, but no one stepped forward. No one spoke up. "My father lost both legs serving this country," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "His wheelchair is legally protected under the ADA." Davidson's smirk widened. "Should have thought about that before coming to the mall. Not my problem if he can't walk." Dad's hand found my arm, squeezing gently, his signal for me to stay calm. Even after losing his legs to an IED outside Kandahar, even after fighting through 18 surgeries and 2 years of rehabilitation, he never lost his composure. Never let anger guide his actions. "Let's go, son," he said softly. "We'll find somewhere else to buy Emily's birthday present." Emily, my 6-year-old daughter, his only grandchild. We'd come to the mall to find the special doll she'd been talking about for months. The doll that was only sold at the specialty toy store inside. "No, Dad," I protested. "This isn't right. He can't." "Stand down, soldier." Dad used his command voice, the one that had led men through combat. "Some battles aren't worth fighting." As we turned to leave, an elderly woman stepped forward from the crowd. Her eyes were sharp with recognition as she looked at my father's Army Ranger's cap. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "But isn't that a silver star pin on your hat?" Dad nodded slightly. "Yes, ma'am." "James Roberts?" she asked, and I saw my father's eyes widen in surprise. "From the 75th Regiment? Do I know you, ma'am?" Her eyes filled with tears. "No, but I know you. My son, David Martinez, served under you in Afghanistan. 3rd Battalion. You saved his life in Kandahar, carried him 2 miles to safety after he was hit. He told me everything." The security guard's smirk faltered slightly. "David was a good soldier," Dad said quietly. "How is he?" "Alive. Happy. Married with 3 kids now, thanks to you." She turned to Davidson, her gentle demeanor suddenly steel. "Young man, do you have any idea who this is? What he sacrificed for our country?" Davidson shifted uncomfortably. "Mall policy clearly states." "I'd like to speak to your supervisor," the woman cut him off. "Immediately." "Ma'am, I don't." "Now." Her tone left no room for argument. "And while you're at it, look up the Americans with Disabilities Act. You're not just being disrespectful, you're breaking federal law." Other voices joined in now, the crowd's silent observation turning to active support. "I've got the mall manager's number right here," a man in a business suit called out, already dialing. "My brother's a lawyer," another woman added. "Specializes in disability rights. Want his card?" Davidson's face reddened as he keyed his radio. Dispatch? Can you send a supervisor to the north entrance?" "Code 2. Dad remained calm through it all, accepting the support with quiet dignity. I recognized the look in his eyes, the same one he got when telling war stories to Emily, carefully editing out the horror while preserving the humanity. A tall man in a better-fitting security uniform hurried toward us. "What seems to be the problem here?" Before Davidson could speak, the elderly woman, Mrs. Martinez, stepped forward again. "This young man just denied access to a decorated veteran because of his medical wheelchair. A veteran who, I might add, is one of only 12 living recipients of both the Silver Star and the Distinguished Service Cross for actions in Afghanistan." The supervisor's face went pale. "Master Sergeant Roberts?" "James Roberts." Dad nodded, clearly surprised at being recognized again. "Sir, I am so sorry," the the supervisor said, shooting a furious look at Davidson. Please come in. Of course you're welcome here. Davidson, in my office. Now. But this story was far from over. Because what none of us knew then was that Mrs. Martinez had already made a phone call. A call that would bring 12 of America's most decorated heroes to this very mall in less than 2 hours. Sometimes a moment of disrespect can trigger an avalanche of honor. And my father, who never sought recognition for his sacrifice, was about to receive one of the most extraordinary tributes I've ever witnessed. As we finally entered the mall, Dad calm as ever while I was still seething, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Master Sergeant Roberts' location confirmed. Operation Honor Guard commencing. ETA 120 minutes. Maintain position. I had no idea what it meant, but I was about to find out just how far the Brotherhood of Warriors would go to honor one of their own. Inside the mall, Dad insisted on continuing our shopping as if nothing had happened. Emily's doll won't by itself, he said with that unshakable calm that had carried him through war and peace. We were in the toy store when my phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. First team assembled. Begin clearing north entrance in 90 minutes. What's that about? Dad asked, noticing my puzzled expression. Probably a wrong number. I lied, not wanting to spoil whatever was being planned. I had a strong suspicion Mrs. Martinez had set something extraordinary in motion. As Dad examined dolls with the careful attention he once gave to mission briefings, I noticed more people in the store glancing at their phones, their expressions a mix of awe and anticipation. Something was definitely happening. The store manager, a woman named Susan, approached us with tears in her eyes. Master Sergeant Roberts? I just got a call from my district supervisor. Everything in the store is on the house today. Dad straightened in his wheelchair. That's not necessary. Please, she interrupted. My brother served in the Marines. He didn't make it back from his last tour. Letting me do this, it would mean a lot. I watched Dad's resistance fade. He understood that sometimes accepting kindness was itself an act of giving. As we left the store, shopping bag hanging from Dad's wheelchair, I noticed something odd. Mall security officers, not Davidson or his like, were quietly directing people away from the north entrance. The crowd was being subtly channeled toward other exits. My phone buzzed yet again. Second team in position. 60 minutes. Then I saw them. 2 men in civilian clothes but with unmistakably military bearing, speaking into earpieces. One caught my eye and nodded slightly. Dad, I said carefully, maybe we should get some coffee before heading out? He looked at me suspiciously. 20 years in special operations had honed his situational awareness. Something's happening, isn't it? Before I could respond, Mrs. Martinez reappeared, now wearing a blue blazer with what looked like military family organization pins. Master Sergeant, would you mind joining me in the food court? There's someone who'd like to speak with you. Dad's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, I appreciate everything you've done, but... James Roberts. A deep voice called from behind us. Still trying to avoid recognition after all these years. Dad's wheelchair spun with combat-honed reflexivity. His face went slack with shock. General Mitchell? A tall man in a tailored suit approached, his chest bearing the distinctive rosette of the Medal of Honor Society. Been a long time, Jim, the general said, extending his hand. Not since that night in Kandahar. Dad gripped the offered hand. Sir, I didn't know you were in the area. I wasn't. None of us were. But when Maria here, he nodded to Mrs. Martinez, called about what happened. Well, some things require an immediate response. Us? Dad asked. General Mitchell smiled. You didn't think you were the only one who remembered that night, did you? How many men did you save when the convoy was hit? 7, 8, 9, I said quietly, having heard the story countless times growing up. How Dad had repeatedly returned to a burning convoy under heavy fire, pulling out wounded soldiers one by one. 9, the general confirmed, including 3 who went on to earn their own medals of honor in later actions. Men who never forgot who gave them the chance to become heroes themselves. Dad's face reddened. I was just doing my job, sir. And now we're doing ours. The general checked his watch. We've got about 30 minutes. Think you could humor an old warrior and share a coffee with me? I watched as they headed toward the food court, the general walking alongside Dad's wheelchair as if they were equals, which, in the Brotherhood of Warriors, they were. My phone buzzed one final time. All teams in position. Operation commencing in 30 minutes. Clear the north entrance. The next half hour passed in a blur of quiet activity. Mall security, now led by men who moved with military precision, systematically cleared the entrance area. Local police arrived, not to intervene but to assist, many of them veterans themselves who'd heard what was happening. News vans began appearing in the parking lot, their presence carefully managed by more men and women in civilian clothes who were clearly anything but civilians. Then, at exactly 2:30 p.m., everything stopped. The mall fell silent. Even the piped-in music ceased. "It's time," General Mitchell said, standing from the food court table. "Jim, I'm afraid I need you to come with me." Dad looked around at the unusual quiet, the cleared corridors, the sense of anticipation in the air. "What's going on, John?" he asked the general. "Something that should have happened years ago," General Mitchell replied. "A proper recognition of what you did that night in Kandahar, and what you sacrificed in service to your country." As we approached the north entrance, I saw them assembling outside. 12 figures in dark suits, each bearing the light blue ribbon and 5-pointed star that marked them as recipients of America's highest military honor. The Medal of Honor, the rarest and most prestigious of military decorations. And 12 of its living recipients had traveled from across the country to stand in formation outside a shopping mall in tribute to my father. Dad's hands gripped his wheelchair's armrests. "John, this isn't necessary," General Mitchell finished. "That's not for you to decide, Master Sergeant. Some debts can never be fully repaid, but they must be acknowledged." The mall doors opened. A sharp command rang out. "Present. Arms." And there, in perfect formation, 12 Medal of Honor recipients raised their hands in salute to the man in the wheelchair, the man who had given so many of them the chance to become heroes themselves. What happened next would be talked about for years to come. The scene outside the mall entrance was something I'll never forget. 12 Medal of Honor recipients stood in perfect formation, their salutes unwavering as my father's wheelchair crossed the threshold. Behind them, hundreds of people had gathered, shoppers, mall employees, local veterans who'd heard what was happening and rushed to be there. Dad sat motionless, his own hand raised in a steady salute, tears streaming down his face for the first time since I'd seen him return from Afghanistan. General Mitchell's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Master Sergeant James Roberts. On the night of June 15, 2012, outside Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, you demonstrated valor above and beyond the call of duty." A hush fell over the crowd as the general continued. "When your convoy was ambushed and disabled by enemy fire, you repeatedly returned to burning vehicles under intense combat conditions. 9 times you went back. 9 times you emerged carrying a wounded brother. Even after being severely wounded yourself, you continued until every man was safe." Dad's hand began to tremble slightly, the memories clearly flooding back. "What you didn't know," the general's voice softened, "was that your actions that night would have ripple effects far beyond that battlefield. Of the 9 men you saved, 3 would go on to earn the Medal of Honor in subsequent actions. 5 others would receive silver stars. All of them credit their survival, and their later acts of valor, to your courage under fire." One by one, the Medal of Honor recipients stepped forward, each one sharing a brief story. "You pulled me from my burning Humvee," said Colonel Marcus Hayes. 2 years later, I was able to save my entire platoon because you gave me that chance. "I was unconscious when you found me," Major Samuel Torres added. "You carried me 2 kilometers under fire. The medal I wear today? It's as much yours as mine." Each testimony hit Dad like a physical blow, his stoic facade crumbling under the weight of their gratitude and respect. Then something unexpected happened. From the back of the crowd, a commotion arose. People were stepping aside, making way for someone pushing through. It was security guard Davidson, no longer smirking, his face pale and shocked. Behind him stood his supervisor, gently but firmly guiding him forward. The young guard stopped in front of Dad's wheelchair, his earlier arrogance replaced by visible shame. "Master Sergeant Roberts," his voice shook. I didn't know. My grandfather was a Marine, and he would be so ashamed of how I acted today. I'm sorry, sir. More sorry than I can say." Dad looked at the young man for a long moment, then did something that left everyone stunned. He smiled and extended his hand. "We all make mistakes, son," he said quietly. "It's how we learn from them that matters." Davidson grasped the offered hand, tears now flowing freely down his face. General Mitchell stepped forward again. "Master Sergeant Roberts, there's one more thing. Something that should have been done years ago, but bureaucracy and paperwork delays got in the way. Until today. He produced a small box, instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with military decorations. By order of the President of the United States, and with the unanimous recommendation of the Medal of Honor Society, you are hereby presented with the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. The crowd erupted in cheers as the general placed the light blue ribbon around Dad's neck, the five-pointed star gleaming in the afternoon sun. "But sir," Dad protested weakly, "the paperwork, the process, was completed 10 years ago," the general smiled. "We just needed the right moment to make it official. And thanks to some misguided mall policy, we finally got that moment." One by one, the other Medal of Honor recipients came forward to welcome their newest brother into their exclusive fellowship. The crowd's applause was deafening, but I could still hear the words they exchanged with my father. "Welcome home, brother. Long overdue, Jim. Now you can't avoid the reunions anymore." Suddenly, a small voice pierced through the ceremony. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" Emily, my 6-year-old daughter, broke free from my wife's grasp and ran toward Dad's wheelchair. Sarah had brought her after getting my cryptic text about coming to the mall immediately. The gathered heroes parted to let her through, smiling as she launched herself into her grandfather's lap, barely missing his newly awarded medal. "Grandpa, why is everyone clapping? Did you do something brave?" Dad hugged her tight, his voice thick with emotion. "No, sweetheart. I just did what needed to be done. Like I always taught you." Emily reached out and touched the Medal of Honor with wonder. "It's pretty. Like a star. You know what it means, Princess?" General Mitchell knelt beside the wheelchair. "It means your grandpa is one of the bravest men in the whole world." Emily beamed. "I already knew that. He reads me stories and fights the monsters under my bed and never ever lets me be scared." There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. The ceremony evolved into an impromptu gathering as more veterans arrived, drawn by word of mouth and social media. The mall management, now falling over themselves to be accommodating, opened the community room for refreshments. Dad sat in the center of it all, still somewhat overwhelmed, as person after person came forward to shake his hand or share a story. Emily remained in his lap, proudly explaining to anyone who would listen that her grandpa was a hero who fought monsters. Security guard Davidson, after being counseled by his supervisor, asked to be assigned to assist with veteran services at the mall. His request was granted, with the condition that he take training in disability rights and sensitivity. Later that evening, as we finally headed home, Dad looked at the Medal of Honor around his neck with a mix of pride and humility. "You know what means more than this?" he asked me quietly. "What's that, Dad?" "That young guard learning and wanting to do better. That's what we fought for, not medals, but the chance to make things right when they go wrong." The story of what happened at Pine Valley Mall that day spread quickly. Local news covered it first, then national outlets picked it up. But the real impact wasn't in the media attention. It was in the changes that followed. The mall instituted a new veteran services program, with Davidson, surprisingly, leading the initiative after extensive training. He became known for his exceptional courtesy to disabled visitors, particularly veterans. Mrs. Martinez's son David, the soldier Dad had saved in Afghanistan, flew in with his family the following week. The reunion was powerful, with David's children meeting the man who had given them the chance to exist by saving their father's life. Emily's doll, the original reason for our mall visit, became her most treasured possession, not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. The day she learned what true heroism looks like. But perhaps the most lasting impact was on the community itself. The sight of 12 Medal of Honor recipients standing in formation to honor one of their own had reminded everyone of the real meaning of respect, sacrifice, and brotherhood. Dad continued to visit the mall regularly, not because he needed to, but because his presence helped change its culture. Every time he entered, he was greeted with respect, not just by the staff, but by everyone who recognized him. And security guard Davidson? He became Dad's most dedicated student, learning everything he could about military service and veteran affairs. A year later, he enlisted in the Army himself, citing Dad as his inspiration. Sometimes it takes a moment of dishonor to remind us what honor truly means. And sometimes, as 12 Medal of Honor recipients proved on an ordinary Saturday afternoon, the greatest tribute we can pay to heroism is to never let it be disrespected. Dad still has the Medal of Honor, of course. But he says his real medal is the changed heart of a young security guard who learned what respect really means, and the knowledge that his story might help others remember the debt we owe to those who serve. As for Emily, she still tells anyone who will listen about the day 12 heroes came to the mall to salute her grandpa. But now she adds something else. My grandpa says the biggest medal isn't the one you wear. It's the one you earn by helping others be better people. Looking at how one moment of disrespect transformed into an unforgettable lesson in honor, I'd say she's absolutely right.